Now that we've talked a little bit about the financial aid pre-read process and the matching process, it's time to talk about the games that coaches play during this process. This is where I'm going to reveal the answer to you of the question that I asked in the last video. And that question was, why might an Ivy League coach want to not give a student athlete a financial aid pre-read? Hopefully you were able to think this one through. I wouldn't have been able to think this one through, but here it is. In the matching process, the way to get a match is to submit a financial aid pre-read from one university to another university whose pre-read is not as good. So if you don't have a financial aid pre-read that is better, then you can't get a match. So I'm going to use Harvard as an example here. If you're the Harvard coach and you're recruiting a few student athletes and you know that they're looking at Harvard and they're also looking at Cornell and Dartmouth and Brown and other Ivy League schools, you may say to those student athletes, why don't you just use the financial aid calculator to get a sense of what you're eligible for? If you put all the information into the financial aid calculator, it's going to be extremely accurate as to what you're eligible for financial aid. Now, what they're telling that student athlete is correct. If they submit the information accurately to the financial aid calculator, they will get an accurate read for what they're going to be eligible for financial aid. But in telling them to use the calculator and actively not starting the financial aid pre-read practice, what they're essentially doing is not providing an official financial aid pre-read that those student athletes can then provide to the other Ivy League schools that they're also being recruited by to get a match. So if those students who are looking at Harvard, Brown, Dartmouth, and Cornell don't have a financial aid read from Harvard, then they can't go to Cornell, Brown, or Dartmouth with a financial aid pre-read from Harvard, which is what the matching system is designed to do. So now you're going to be, the student athlete is left with the decision. Do I go to Harvard, which the coach is telling me that the financial aid calculator is very accurate and that seems very strong, or do I pay more to go to one of these other universities? It seems like a pretty obvious decision that you should go to Harvard if it's going to also be cheaper than going to these other schools. Even if the student athlete is looking at these other schools and thinking, Cornell's the perfect place for me, but how can I pay more money to go to Cornell than to go to Harvard? It sounds crazy. And so that's why the financial aid pre-read process and the matching process exists. And that's why it is Ivy policy to provide financial aid pre-reads, and the matching process exists so that student athletes don't have to decide between Ivy League schools based on financial aid. So some of these schools will play games like this, but recognize that they are playing games with you. If they say, "Oh, we don't really do the financial aid pre-read process that much because the calculator is so accurate," that's a red flag. They are either not that serious about recruiting you, and they're trying to limit the number of financial aid pre-reads that they're sending over to the Office of Financial Aid, or they're trying to keep you from getting a pre-read that you can then match at another university. That's a red flag. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go to that school, but recognize that that coach is playing a game and they are strategically trying to get you to go to their school, and they're using the leg up of financial aid, which they really shouldn't. Another reason that one of these higher financial aid Ivy League schools might want to keep you from having a financial aid read is to keep you from continuing the recruiting process with them if you're not interested. So they may try to push back against you getting a financial aid read if they're getting the sense that you're only continuing down the path of the recruiting process in order to get a financial aid read so that you can go elsewhere. So if you're for some reason giving off some of those vibes to them, that might be a reason. While I wouldn't advise trying to be recruited by Harvard, Princeton, or Yale solely for the purpose of getting a financial aid read that you can use to match at another university, I don't see anything wrong with, if you're already being recruited by Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, just following through with the financial aid pre-read there so that if it is better than some of the other Ivies and you do determine that you want to go to the other Ivies and you'll be able to get that match, I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. Likewise, if you're the kind of person who just plans to reach out to all the Ivy League schools with an email, if Harvard, Princeton, or Yale are interested, again, getting a financial aid pre-read there is not a bad idea. And at the end of the day, that's going to be an important determining factor. So even if you might be interested in some of the other Ivies more than those three, once you see the price tag, if the price tag is better, that's an important piece of the puzzle to know, because that might make it more of a possibility for you and you might be more interested in that school because of that. Fortunately, there is actually a workaround for you to be able to receive a match with another Ivy League school, even if you don't have the official financial aid pre-read. Now, this workaround was created because there are some schools that are hesitant to give as many financial aid pre-reads. So if you're being recruited by Harvard and they won't give you a financial aid pre-read, then another school, let's say Dartmouth, might tell you, well, if you send us what the calculator at Harvard says and you send us proof of recruitment by the Harvard coaches, that would usually be in the form of email communication or text messages. Then Dartmouth might go ahead and match the financial aid calculator at Harvard. And so it's a little bit more of a challenge to get the financial aid department at the other schools to make a match based on the financial aid calculator. But that is a solution that some of these schools have come up with if another Ivy is unwilling to give a financial aid pre-read.